military success. Iran's key nuclear enrichment facilities have been completely and totally obliterated. Iran, the bully of the Middle East, must now make for 40 arms blowing off their legs with roadside bombs. That was their specialty. We lost over 1,000 people, and hundreds of thousands throughout the Middle East and around the world have died as a direct result of their hate. In particular, so many were killed by "it will not continue." I want to thank and congratulate Prime Minister Bibi Netanyahu. We worked as a team like perhaps no team. Thank the Israeli military for the wonderful job they've done. And most importantly, I want to congratulate the great American patriots who flew the many, many decades. Hopefully, we will no longer need their services in this capacity. I hope that's so. I also want to congratulate the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Dan Raisin Kane, spectacular general, and all of the brilliant military minds involved in this. There will be tragedy for Iran far greater than we have witnessed over the last 8 days. Remember, there are many targets left. Tonight's was the most difficult of them all, by far, and perhaps the most lethal. But if peace does not come quickly, we will go after of them can be taken out in a matter of minutes. There's no military in the world that could have done what we did tonight, not even close. There has never been a military that could do what took place just a little while ago. Tomorrow, General Kane, Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth will have a press conference. In particular, God, I want to just say, we love you, God, and we love our great military. Protect them. God bless the Middle East. God bless Israel, and God bless America. Thank you very much. Thank you.
All right, there you have it. President Trump, in very brief, completely obliterated, standing there addressing the nation. Behind him, Vice President Vance, Secretary of State Marco Rubio, and also the Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth. I'm Andrew Kraft. Thanks so much for being with us here on this momentous night in America. You might have missed it live. We're going to be showing it to you throughout the course of the evening, also bringing on guests, experts, analysts to help us make sense of this particular moment in time in American history, in the history, the makeup and the shape, the dynamic of the Middle East. June the 21st, 2025 will be a day that is remembered as a huge, huge moment for what happens going forward to the dynamic of the Middle East. And we'll just have to wait and see. A lot of you are probably asking yourself, now what? I think that's a safe question, an apt question to be asking. And the sun coming up now over the skies of Jerusalem. We also know that President Trump and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu were on the phone. The United States gave the Israelis a heads up that they were going to do this, and you can see there. In the meantime, speaking of the Israeli leader, we also got on social media a message from Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu as well, thanking the Trump administration. What we want to do right now, we want to show that video to you as well. Let's listen to this.
Congratulations, President Trump. Your bold decision to target Iran's nuclear, Israel has done truly amazing things. But in tonight's action against Iran's nuclear facilities, America has been truly unsurpassed. It has done what no other country on earth could do. History will record that President Trump acted to deny. His leadership today has created a pivot of history that can help lead the Middle East and beyond to a future of prosperity and peace. President Trump and I often say, peace through strength. First comes strength, then comes peace. And tonight, President Trump and the United States acted with a lot of strength. President Trump, I thank you. The people of Israel thank you. The forces of civilization thank you. God bless America. God bless Israel. And may God bless our unshakable alliance, our unbreakable faith.
With an update on Operation rising lion that we have been following ever since last Thursday when I was on the air with you when Israel launched those preemptive strikes on sites in Iran here. So what we want to do right now, because there's a lot of moving pieces to this story, it is fluid, it is breaking, it is developing. If you missed it live, we want to play it yet again. This was very brief from President Trump here. Let's re-rack it. Let's show it to you in case you might have missed it.
Thank you very much. Massive precision strikes on the 3 key nuclear facilities in the Iranian regime: Fordow, Natanz, and Esfahan. Everybody heard those names for years as they built this, and a stop to the nuclear threat posed by the world's #1 state sponsor of terror. Tonight, I can report to the world facilities have been completely and totally obliterated. Iran, the bully of the Middle East, must now make peace. If they do not, future attacks will be far greater and a lot easier. For 40 years, Iran has been saying death to America, death to Israel. They have been killing our people, blowing off their arms, blowing off their legs with roadside bombs. That was their specialty. We lost over 1,000 people, and hundreds of thousands throughout the Middle East and around the world have died as a direct result of their hate. In particular, so many were killed by their general, Qasem Soleimani. Mr. Bibi Netanyahu, we worked as a team like perhaps no team has ever worked before. And we've gone a long way to erasing this horrible threat to Israel. I want to thank the Israeli military for the wonderful job they've done. And most importantly, I want to congratulate the great American military on an operation the likes of which the world has not seen in many, many decades. Hopefully, we will no longer need their services in this capacity. I hope that's so. I also want to congratulate the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Dan, who said this cannot continue. There will be either peace or there will be tragedy for Iran far greater than we have witnessed over the last 8 days. Remember, there are many targets left. Tonight's was the most difficult of them all, by far, and perhaps the most lethal. But if peace does not come quickly, we will go after those other targets with precision, speed, and skill. Most of them can be taken out in a matter of minutes. There's no military in the world that could have done what we did tonight, not even close. There has never been a military that could do what took place just a little while at the Pentagon. And I want to just thank everybody, and in particular, God. I want to just say, we love you, God, and we love our great military. Protect them. God bless the Middle East. God bless Israel, and God bless America. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay, so Andrew Kraft back here. Wanted to replay that for you in case you might have missed it, saying that he and Net raising Cain and says this could not continue, saying we needed peace, saying also there are many targets left throughout the course of this entire story, leaving the door open yet again to diplomacy. We'll see if that's actionable or operative at all in the wake of this. In the meantime, though, I want to go out to Capitol Hill. We have a live picture there in Washington. It's a little bit after the 10 o'clock hour there in D.C. Chad Pergram reporting this, that it wasn't only the Israelis that got a heads up. A senior White House official saying the White House gave a courtesy heads up to congressional leadership. That's, of course, Senate Majority Leader John Thune, that's of Schumer, and also House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries. Speaking of Hakeem Jeffries, he put out a statement saying this, that Donald Trump promised to bring peace to the Middle East. He's failed to deliver on that promise. The risk of war is now dramatically increased, and I pray for the safety of our troops in the region who have been put in authorization for the use of military force and risks American entanglement in a potentially disastrous war in the Middle East. Jeffries be fully and immediately briefed in a classified setting. Third, Donald Trump shoulders complete and total responsibility for any adverse live there to the U.S. Capitol. Also, some other news made in that very, very short statement by the president that at 8 o'clock a.m. Eastern time tomorrow morning, There will be a press briefing at the Pentagon. Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth will be there, and Chairman of the Joint Chiefs, General Kane, will be there as well, taking questions from reporters. So, of course, here on Live Now from Fox, we will be showing you that press conference. National security analyst and expert and retired Marine intelligence officer Hal Kempfer still on the horn after so many hours. Hal, you and I have been on the air for so many of these historic moments. I would say that this is one of the most major ones, and it's always a pleasure. And I know you're traveling, and so we thank you for your time. So I got to ask, and you heard me say this question, what now? You heard Hakeem Jeffries in that statement saying that the president needs to reaffirm, explain to the American people why this was needed. Did he do that in that
explanation that needs to be put out there? I think he kind of explained the imperative of why the strikes took place now. He also outlined some things, leaders of Congress, which I thought was really good. That was something, the airspace and a lot of other things. So it wasn't like it or that we were launching Tomahawk missiles. So that all had to be coordinated regardless in terms of what was happening there. But I think probably one of the biggest things there, and by the way, he did kind of illuminate the battle damage, if you will, in terms of how much destructive force was used. He very basically clarified it were also, essentially neutralized. But the other thing was, what is the intent going forward? And he's handed out the olive branch, if you will, saying, look, diplomacy. At the same time, he's raised a list of targets that we're looking at. In other words, planning, preparation, the forces are in place, everything to follow up on that, which I have to tell you, when you're negotiating on the national security side of the house, it is good to have a very credible threat in hand to say, let's try and work this out, or here's the alternative.
Hal, I have to say there's kind of two thoughts in my head right now at the same time, maybe President Trump's too, is, he left open the door for diplomacy. He used the word deal again, but said if that is not operative, that they're also, our viewers are maybe asking themselves, what next? Will there be more? Is that safe to ask that question, the uncertainty of that right now? It's kind of a wait and see, is it not?
I think it is a wait and see. On the other hand, that's a very legitimate question to ask.
Okay.
And what he has done is he has removed the doubt that the U.S. is prepared to do more than what we just did. The question, conflict, and then walk away. And he's left it open that, no, we're ready to do more. Of course, the other part of this is what will be the Iranian response. Other things around the world using their proxy network or their clandestine network or something like that. What will be the Iranian response to this? And of course, that will help drive what our follow-on actions would be to counter that response and to deal with the nation state of Iran.
Yeah.
So he's kind of left this wide open, but it's rather interesting. I really think, look, it's something with Iran. And Iran basically did what Iran always does in these negotiations, which is they kind of played around, they wouldn't make concessions, and they'd come back with this over-the-top rhetoric and stuff like, we're not going to do anything, and blah, to the point is, I think at one point we're going to negotiate this thing, and I was listening to this, and I was like, we're really not making a lot of progress here. And literally at the end of the 60 days is when Israel did, there will be consequences.
Asking you the question and posing it this way, that Israel couldn't strike these sites, these nuclear sites, without our help. And so maybe our viewers are wondering, what did Israel do to assist? Or was this completely unilateral on the United States? Involved in some capacity, maybe with intelligence sharing, maybe with actual kinetic assistance here. So I think that's a really interesting question. And I have to get this on with you as well. The misdirection, the diversion, to me, has been so impressive to the point, remember, west. And then you have to think, well, why would they be flying west? Jennifer Griffin reporting this, that the mission followed reports, of course, of 6 B-2s taking off from Whiteman Air Force Base in Missouri around midnight last night. While initial chatter suggested the aircraft were headed west toward Guam, Jennifer Griffin noted the true flight path was like exception. How much did that throw Iran off guard?
Well, I will say this. The art of war is deception, and misdirect really gained much by forward deploying our bombers to Guam. And And by the way, I should mention, I've been to Guam a lot. I've been on Anderson Air Force Base. I've seen the hangars where the gain out of it is that if you're going to if you're doing a long range mission, you may not have to overfly some places that you otherwise would have to overfly, which is kind of important when you're doing long range bomber missions. But there wasn't a whole lot that was gained from doing that. Now, what we're certainly seeing is they said, hey, we're going to Guam. Now, Guam is known to host B-2s. They have a facility to do so. They have a big hangar and stuff. So that would make sense, to say, okay, they're going to Guam because that is the one place we launched. They can't really cover up the fact they've launched. I mean, literally, you could sit outside the base and watch them launch. So you can't really cover that part up, operationally speaking. But where they're going, once they get another direction, which obviously they did, and so this was all part of, operational tactical deception. The other thing too, which you and I, within 2 weeks, that's what the White House was saying, within 2 weeks, which the Iranians heard, oh great, we got 2 weeks. And some were saying, I think we're pretty much caught off guard. They didn't expect this to happen when it happened, which
Okay.
is, if you're a big military strike, that's what you want. So, which is they caught the Iranians off guard. And of course, the airspace has to be completely coordinated with the Israelis. So,
Yes.
you knew that was going to have to be a very, these are B-2 bombers. Their whole thing is stealth. And if an F-14 was to get in the air, was to find some way to get into proximity of a B-2 bomber, so there was a coordinated piece with the Israelis on this. It wasn't just us. The Israelis did something in coordination with this.
Okay. Hal Kemper, we're going to leave it at that. We always appreciate your insight, especially on this historic occasion. Hal, thanks so much. Have a good night.
All right.
Strategy there. So you just heard the president saying that Iran's key nuclear sites were, quote unquote, completely and fully obliterated. Strikes against 3 key nuclear facilities in Iran. The president also warned Tehran against carrying out retaliatory attacks against the U.S., saying Iran has, this is a breaking news update, as you know, confirming attacks took place on its Fordo, Isfahan, and Natanz atomic sites, but is insisting that its work will not be stopped. The Atomic Energy Organization of Iran issued that statement after President Trump announced the American attack on the facilities here. So there is confirmation from Iran that there was actual targets that were struck by the United States. Their state-run news agency, IRNA, reported early Sunday, quoted an individual by the name of Akbar Salehi, that's Isfahan's deputy governor in charge of security affairs, saying there had been attacks around the sites, though he did not elaborate. Another official confirmed an attack targeting Iran's underground Fordo nuclear site here. So in the meantime, we do want to bring in more voices to the conversation, including my friend there at the Foundation for Defense of Democracies, David Dawood. He's going to join us in just a moment here. All right, like I said here, David Dawood joining me. We are in full breaking news coverage here. We want to thank everyone for watching on this very late Saturday night. David, thanks for joining us on this late Saturday night, but it's a historic occasion, a historic, momentous occasion here. I'm going to ask a simplistic question that may sound somewhat glib and simplistic to viewers. Has the United States ever struck targets inside Iran? Have we ever used military force inside the country of Iran?
No, not to this extent. There was Operation Eagle Claw, which was meant to rescue American hostages that were held by affiliates of the government of Iran after the revolution. That unfortunately failed. The hostages were not rescued. They were released upon the President Reagan taking office. But this is unprecedented for the United States to have struck Iran at all internally and definitely in this manner.
So, David, I have to ask this, and maybe this is unanswerable right now. I mean, President Trump did say Iran's nuclear program is completely obliterated after tonight here. How will we know that? Will we have, people on the ground who can confirm that? Yes, the president is saying that here, but as far as Iran's nuclear program, where does it stand right now? What phase is it in? Is it completely decimated, like the president says, or is it too early to know?
Well, right now I'd say it's too early to know. The Iranians themselves are saying that the fissile material was moved out of the facilities prior to the strikes, or much earlier than the strikes they were claiming. Now, look, is that true? Is that a face-saving claim so they can walk down the de-escalatory ladder to attack U.S. assets and U.S. personnel for some time if any strike by the United States occurred in Iran? Now it's time for them to put their figurative money where their mouth is, and they may not want to do that
Yeah.
because there will be consequences, as President Trump said. You attack us, we're going to keep attacking back. So it may be that this is their way claiming that the fissile material was moved to be able to walk this back and not follow through on these threats. It may be true. I think time will tell more so than anything. We have the intelligence that the Israelis were able to gather on location of these sites program period, but particularly its nuclear weapons program, is after these strikes. But that may take some time to make that full assessment.
I mean, we have a live picture there over Jerusalem as the sun comes up right now. And obviously, I don't have to say this, I'm going to reiterate it, but we know when Israel launched the preemptive strikes last Thursday, Iran retaliated in kind, and it's been this tit for tat ever since. Now, the dynamic of whatever Iran does in retaliation will look different. We have U.S. assets in the region in the form of materiel, in the form of troops, also American citizens in the region, many of whom, are being evacuated from Israel right now. If you're watching this right now,
Again, there are a lot of question marks here. So the Israelis have been engaged in now, I think it's a 10-day campaign in Iran to degrade not just the nuclear weapons program, but they've also been striking the ballistic missiles program and other military assets. I think there was a strike on the Iranian Navy yesterday as well. So there's this degradation of Iran's ability to retaliate directly. Now, if we look at the ballistic missiles, in terms of their attacks on Israel, they've been decreasing in the quantity of barrages overall and the quantity of missiles within each barrage. I think last night or yesterday, there was one missile barrage of 5 missiles each. It's the lowest that's happened since the onset of the war. Now, simultaneously, the Israelis are saying that they've destroyed most of Iran's ballistic missile launchers. But this doesn't mean that Iran's out of assets. Now, could it suggest that Iran's winning this conflict and they'd have to respond to the United States, which could, anytime you have any military engagement, there's the possibility that this could precipitate a much larger, much more protracted conflict between Iran and the United States. So is Iran holding assets in reserve? They're also, and this is something that, they've been kind of missing from the scene, but Iran's proxies, Hezbollah is the primary proxy. It's taken a beating, but anyone who says that Hezbollah is down for the count is speaking prematurely. So has Iran been holding this in reserve until such a moment? There's also the SNL. So they have options that are beyond military strikes or direct military strikes through their ballistic missiles, cruise missiles. There are other assets that they could use and activate to threaten her in Europe.
that is the question, especially from some critics of this action, including from some members of the president's own party, that this will turn into yet another foreign entanglement, that this will be protracted. But then I'd be remiss if I didn't bring up Trump's first term, where he struck targets in Syria. That was a one-off. Do you see similarities to that here tonight?
Well, I think there's an even more similar to what he said today, both on Truth Social and in his statement, that we're done. Now's the time for peace. And Iran could, there are reports that the United States had informed Iran that there's no intention on the part of the United States to engage in regime change in Iran, that these strikes will be a one-off for them to restore deterrence to the extent that they can restore deterrence after this, as it is to show that their base, and this is the real threat to the regime, that they are still capable of responding in kind, of retaliating in kind, that they're not just going to take this quietly. But it could just end up at that, and President Trump doesn't have to continue down this escalatory ladder with the Iranians. That is a possibility.
So, David, if you want to characterize it as follows, do you envision a scenario where, talking about Iran's retaliation to this tonight, that they would also, bear the brunt of whatever Iran does, Israel, that they will suffer the slings and arrows?
So a possibility, the Home Front Command, just prior to President Trump speaking, had issued updated instructions to, they loosened requirements in the past couple of days because Iran's ballistic missiles attacks had become less frequent. Like I said, fewer missiles per barrage. The Israelis were able to contend with them better, and now they've raised those alerts again. So I think the Israelis are expecting some kind of retaliation. And look, let's be honest here: the Israelis fired the first blows in this. They
Right.
paved the way today. There were reports today that the reason the B-2 bombers were able to make it into Iran safely and out was because the Israelis were destroying Iranian assets along the way that could have impeded the retaliation against Israel.
Okay, so some more kind of philosophical questions right now. I'm not even sure if it's time for that because this is still a breaking news story. But you and I talk about the 30,000-foot view from this. Is it naive to say that after tonight, Iran will no longer have a range for Iran to give up their nuclear program here, or not? I mean, clearly, President Trump says their program's no more. After tonight, the Ayatollah is still alive, still in charge. So is the regime change question right now not the question we should be asking, or premature? Because you have to separate the two. Who's in charge of Iran and their nuclear program?
Look, again, I think it may be too soon to tell. What the Iranians are saying is that you can destroy these facilities, you can destroy the centrifuges, but you can't destroy the know-how. What the Israelis are proving is that they can destroy the know-how. They've been engaged in an assassination campaign against Iran's top nuclear scientists. So activated their proxies. Their proxies haven't been destroyed. The regime still has an ability to walk this back, and tactics may change. Where their emphasis may change. But their ideology will not change, and that ideology remains this antipathy towards the West, this desire to challenge Western civilization, and at its forefront, the United States. Does that mean that they'll go back to rebuilding a nuclear weapons program immediately? Again, I think if enough Iranian nuclear scientists have been killed, that won't be as easy as just let's rebuild the buildings and restart the centrifuges. So it'll have to take, again, redeveloping the know-how, and that could take a long period of time. Look, I do think that the only way this ends, the only way that Iran's threat to the region, both conventional and from weapons of mass destruction, ends, is with a change of this regime.
Because some of the critics of this action tonight are saying, and have said along the last week, that they'll just restart it eventually. It's only a matter of time. They can regroup. So we'll just have to your point, wait and see. Let's talk about on the ground in Iran. We're anticipating, we're waiting to see if we see it, any images or videos of the strikes themselves or the aftermath. So for our viewers who are keenly aware of that, we're looking for it, haven't found it just yet. Were there people, everyday Iranians, who go to work at these sites each and every day? Were they there during the strikes, or were they evacuated? Because something else that I've been discussing with experts like yourself, bombings, that dredges up a lot of radioactive material in the air, in the ground, in the wake of the explosions here. So are you looking at a potential kind of
casualties among those who are working at the facilities? But as far as we can tell, there's, again, this is too soon to tell, but the Iranians aren't reporting a regroup eventually. But I think there's a benefit to the regime with a dangerous ideology. And we've seen the havoc that Iran can wreak without a nuclear weapon. Imagine what it could do if all of its militias and all of its regional destabilization had a nuclear umbrella behind it. So distancing this regime as much as possible from a weapon, even if it's 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, however, community. I don't know what, if what these critics have as an alternative, if Iran was indeed weeks or months away from a nuclear weapon, is it not better? I pose the question back to them. Is it not better than to have them mere weeks and months away from a nuclear weapon, to have them 5 or 10 years away from a nuclear weapon?
Okay, so David, you just made the case to the critics that I have been kind of following all throughout the last 2 weeks here. What if they don't buy those arguments? What is the alternative to your point? Because the arguments of the critics are the United States does not need to enter into another foreign entanglement. No, it is. And he is kind of not really listening to some of those voices, even coming from within his own party here. So I think you expertly kind of made the case. But if one of those critics was on with us right now, I mean, how would you respond? What would your retort be to them?
I would say they don't understand the nature of the Iranian regime. The Iranians are a bigger threat to the state of Israel. Israel is the only country that Iran has slated for destruction. But at the same time, let's understand the reason because we support Israel. They hate Israel because it's an extension of the United States. And don't listen to David Daoud saying this. Listen to Hezbollah, which is an Iranian asset, saying this. I'm an expert on Hezbollah. This is what I know. What I know best. They keep calling Israel a forward military base and a tool of the United States. The narrative even on Israel to enter that war in order to create a new Middle East. The way they view the world is that the United States is, to quote Hezbollah, the head of corruption, the font of corruption, and everything flows from that, including Israel's military might. And the way that the Iranian regime views itself is that it is their job in order to push their view, their worldview, to weaken us in any way, shape, or form. So maybe they're not threatening us directly now, in the sense that the way they're ballistic missiles falling on Israel. But there is a weaken the United States. And in doing so, that will threaten our way we have to invade Iran and destroy that, both to its surroundings and in the broader sense to the United States and its interests.
David, lastly, though, what about the Iranian people? There's been this, some would call kind of logical fallacy and maybe naivete going on that in the wake of all of this, there would be this kind of organic, coming up of that, Israel has somewhat liberated them from the jackboot of the theocratic mullahs here. You haven't seen that. Are people naive to the regime? Do they want the regime gone? Is this positive, good news of what the United States did today, or no?
Look, I think it's a complicated question. Look, when we've spoken about this, when it comes to Lebanon, I've always said it's hard to just say what the Lebanese streets' opinion is. And I would say, I'm not an expert on Iran. I don't follow Iran very closely or as closely as I do Lebanon. But I will say every side in the discussion over whether the Iranian regime saying that we are the majority, we represent the Iranian people and the will of the Iranian people, and so does the Iranian regime. It's hard to tell on the ground, right? This is not a democracy where you can go in and get honest opinions from people. What we have not seen, however, maybe we've seen some smatterings, on social media, image. What we have not seen, however, this military operation is still. We're still in the middle of this, so it's not done yet. So maybe it is too soon to speak. Maybe I am speaking prematurely. But when we go out into the street, take this opportunity to go out to the operation, and they're waiting for that to be done, is that because the psyche of fear in which this Iranians protest with the utmost brutality. So have you, as the Iranian people, or have these Iranians who oppose the regime lost the hope to come out and protest the regime? It's unclear. Again, I can't speak their respective support.
All right. David Daoud, we're going to have to leave it at that. Always good to see you. Your insight is extremely valuable. We'll definitely be chatting tonight in our continuing coverage of what is very historic. I asked that question right off the top to David. Has the United States look out for some of these visual aids, videos, photos inside Iran of the explosions themselves? Haven't seen them yet. Confirmed. There's a lot kind of percolating out there on social media. We'll wait to confirm some of those images and media and bring those to you so you can see for yourselves the aftermath of some of these strikes inside of Iran at these 3 nuclear enrichment facilities. Let's put up the map yet again as we continue to bring in more expert analysis, reporters, guests. On deck is my friend and colleague at the Washington Examiner, Michael Brest. He covers the Pentagon each and every day. So there you can see, telling the world this is what the United States did. He said, we have completed our very successful attack on the 3 nuclear sites in Iran, including Fordow, Natanz, and Isfahan. All planes are now outside of Iran airspace. A full payload of bombs was dropped on the primary site, Fordow. All planes are safely on their way home. Congratulations to our great American warriors. There is not another military in the world that could have done this. Now is the time for peace. Thank you for your attention to this matter. And I believe he posted yet again on Truth Social. Moment. Thank you, Donald J. Trump, President of the United States. And I think it's a safe question. Probably a lot of you have. What will Iran do in response? What will that even look like? Also, we're getting kind of a inside view into the Situation Room. The White House putting out new photos of the moments that these strikes were ongoing as the president's national security team. White House just releasing these. You also see Chairman of the Joint Chiefs, Kane, also White House Chief of Staff, Susie Wiles, CIA Director John Ratcliffe, also Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, So this is courtesy of the White House. These are extremely new images from the Situation Room. In the background there, Dan Scavino, White House Communications Director. So in the meantime, remember, at 8 a.m. Eastern tomorrow morning, that's 5 a.m. Pacific time, at the Pentagon, there will be a press briefing from Secretary Hegseth and the chairman of the Joint Chiefs. I would imagine that my friend and colleague, Mike Brest there at the Washington Examiner, will be on hand for that. We're going to bring him into the conversation momentarily here. Take a look at this. Live picture there at the White House. He is on standby, and the chairman of the Joint Chiefs.
So I think on a very basic level, there are questions that need answering in terms of confirmation, the battle damage assessments, but any initial reads on just sort of how successful the mission was, is how exactly have they gone about preparing U.S. bases in the region should they come under nation. And so I think when we look ahead, that has to be one of the major sort of viewpoints that we have to look at and sort of see exactly.
So, Mike, I have to ask, let's kind of walk our viewers back. Earlier in the day, there was so much reporting about the B-2 bombers, 6 of them that were flying, it was reported, to the west toward Guam. Jennifer Griffin, our colleague at Fox, who reports alongside you at the Pentagon, said this, that the true flight paths have been a calculated deception. I'm not a military expert by any means. A B-2 plane, a B-2 jet, bunker buster bombs, 30,000 pounds each. We used 6 of them. Also, we use multiple Tomahawk missiles here. If you could, walk us through the materiel that was used.
So as you mentioned, the B-2 bombers are housed at a base in Missouri. So that's where they took off from. As Jen Griffin reported, it seems like all the reporting we saw about some of the B-2s going west was actually somewhat of a deception. It shouldn't be hard, or that shouldn't be too difficult to think through or prove in Europe. And so the refueler aircraft allow for the B-2 bomber to be refueled while in the air. So there is a possibility that these B-2s went right from Missouri to the Middle East and back, having to be refueled in this instance. We've been told carried the 30,000. It's called the Massive Ordnance Penetrator. It's one of the largest non-nuclear weapons the U.S. has, and it's specifically designed to hit a hardened underground target. So that's exactly why they were using it to hit the nuclear facilities in Iran that were underground.
So, Mike, you remember that some of the within the White House, it was reported that, Trump and others, they weren't so sure that the bunker buster bombs could do the job. The nuclear program, rather, of Iran has been completely obliterated. So all the worry that the bunker busters...
Because the president sort of gave an overall assessment of the operation, but we don't know any of the specific. But part of the reason there was this concern or this mystery about whether or not using these bombs would be successful is because the U.S. dropped the bomb is in and of itself a new experience for the military. So they're probably still
Mike,
evaluating the success.
Can you reiterate that point? Mike, can you reiterate that point? I think that was the use of these bunker buster bombs until today.
Yes, exactly. And so it's really hard to see even how the U.S. would be able to know the success of it this soon after.
Okay.
And so I'm sure in the days and weeks ahead, and I'm sure the Secretary and Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff will probably give some level of an update tomorrow, but it could be several days, if not a couple of weeks, before we get a full understanding of how successful these massive ordnance penetrator bombs were. And I'm sure a lot of that information will be classified, and we'll find out from the unclassified details that emerge.
All right, let's talk about what other questions you might ask. Of course, we're going to be showing the press conference in full tomorrow live. What else do you want to know? How it was carried out, how it was executed, the help. What else do you want to know?
I think there are a lot of questions in terms of on how close Iran was to actually getting a nuclear weapon. I think these are questions that the Pentagon should discuss, in part because they haven't been briefing reporters or haven't held a briefing in the last week since this war got underway. So there are a lot of questions. I would love to ask questions about the U.S.'s involvement in the defense of Israel. We heard from sources within the building that they were involved in intercepting Israeli missiles or Iranian missiles heading for Israel, excuse me, but we don't know how many. We don't know uh, how successful the U.S. was in their efforts. And so there's a lot now.
Now, they haven't only just not briefed since then. From what I understand, there's only been, because we would air it in its entirety here on Live Now, there's only been one full Pentagon press briefing in the briefing room since President Trump took office a second time in January. Do I have that right?
That is correct. So the first briefing was right after the Houthi bombing campaign began. Secretary Hegseth has not been in the Pentagon briefing room to take questions from reporters, so this will actually be our first time getting the opportunity to ask him some questions.
Okay, I just wanted to note that point because obviously we get near daily White House press briefings, we get near daily State Department and unorthodox, compared with previous presidential administrations, right?
It is. The current administration has taken a very different tact as it relates to how it tries to relay information to the American people.
Okay, Mike, always glad to have you on. I know it's late there in Washington, and I'm sure we'll be speaking in the next couple of days. Thanks so much, Mike.
Thank you.
Okay, in the meantime here, we are approaching a new hour. It's almost 8 o'clock here on the West Coast, almost 11 p.m. there in Washington. And so at the top of there in the White House, standing behind him, of course, was the Vice President, the Secretary of State, and also the Secretary of Defense. After that, a reaction from world leaders as well on social media, including from the UN Secretary General, Antonio Guterres. We'll have that for you. We're also on the lookout for more and more of these statements from world leaders. We've gotten a lot of congressional reaction. We'll kind of go through that as well here from the relevant committees. Remember, it was reported, courtesy of our colleague Chad Pergram there on Capitol Hill, that the Trump White House did give congressional leaders and throughout the evening, nonstop here with continuing coverage of a historic first, June 21st. Remember this day, 2025, the United States striking targets inside Iran militarily for the first time. 8 o'clock here on the dot. In the meantime,
Thank you very much. A short time ago, the U.S. military carried out massive precision strikes on the 3 key nuclear facilities in the Iranian regime, Fordow, Natanz, and Esfahan. Everybody heard those names for years as they built city and a stop to the nuclear threat posed by the world's #1 state sponsor of terror. Tonight, I can report to the world that the strikes were a spectacular military success. Iran's key nuclear enrichment facilities have been completely and totally obliterated. Iran, the bully of the Middle East, must now make peace. If they do not, future attacks will be far greater and a lot easier. For 40 years, Iran has been saying death to America, death to Israel. They have been killing our people, blowing off their arms, blowing off their legs with roadside bombs. That is a direct result of their hate. In particular, so many were killed by their general, Qasem Soleimani. I decided a long time ago that I would not let this happen. It will not continue. I want to thank and congratulate Prime Minister Bibi Netanyahu. We worked as a team like perhaps no team has ever worked before. And we've gone a long way to erasing this horrible threat to Israel. I want to thank the Israeli military for the wonderful job they've done. And most importantly, I want to congratulate the States military on an operation the likes of which the world has not seen in many, many decades. Hopefully, we will no longer need their services in this capacity. I hope that's so. I also want to congratulate the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Dan Raisin-Kane, spectacular general, and all of the brilliant military minds involved in this attack. With all of that being said, this cannot continue. There will be either peace or there will be tragedy for Iran far greater than we have witnessed, all by far, and perhaps the most lethal. But if peace does not come quickly, we will go after those other targets with precision, speed, and skill. Most of them can be taken out in a matter of minutes. There's no military a while ago. Tomorrow, General Kane, Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth will have a press conference at 8 a.m. at the Pentagon. And I want to just thank everybody, and in particular, God. I want to just say we love you, God, and we love our great military. Protect them. God bless the Middle East. God bless Israel, and God bless America. Thank you very much. Thank you.
All right, that was the brief message there from President Trump at the White House now about an hour ago. The president, for these actions just tonight, he put this video message online. Let's watch.
Congratulations, President Trump. Your bold decision to target Iran's nuclear facilities with the awesome and righteous might of the United States will change history. In Operation Rising Lion, Israel has done truly amazing things. But in tonight's action against Iran's nuclear dangerous regime, the world's most dangerous weapons, his leadership today has created a pivot of history that can help lead the Middle East and beyond to a future of prosperity and peace. President Trump and I often say, peace through strength. First comes strength, then comes peace. And tonight, President Trump, and thank you, the forces of civilization, thank you. God bless America, God bless Israel, and may God bless our unshakable alliance.
Gravely alarmed by the use of force by the United States against Iran today, saying this is a dangerous escalation in a region of international peace and security. There is a growing risk that this conflict could rapidly get out of control, with catastrophic consequences for civilians, the region, and the world. He says, I call on member states to de-escalate and to uphold their obligations under the UN Charter and other rules of international law. At this perilous hour, it is critical to avoid a spiral of chaos. There is no military solution. The only path forward is diplomacy. The only hope is peace. Coming there, the message from the United Nations was a key focal point of our coverage on Friday. You heard from the Israeli ambassador. You heard from the Iranian ambassador there at the Security Council. In the meantime, speaking of New York City, remember, we're garnering reaction as well from local and state elected leaders here stateside. We're hearing from the NYPD. Take a look at this. They say this, that we're tracking the situation unfolding in Iran. Out of an abundance of caution, we're deploying additional resources to religious, cultural, and diplomatic sites across New York City and coordinating with our federal partners. We'll continue to monitor for any potential impact to Gavin Newsom. Take a look at this. He says, following the president's action in Iran, California's State Threat Assessment Center is actively monitoring for any potential impacts in California. He says, while there are no specific or credible counter threats we are aware of at this time, we urge everyone to stay vigilant and to report anything they may see. So the message coming from California Governor Gavin Newsom, kind of a coast-to-coast reaction there in the Middle East, including my friend now there, political scientist at UCLA, Benjamin Rad. He joins me. Benjamin, good to see you here. You and I were speaking, I believe, on Friday, and now here we are. Your initial reaction, how momentous of an occasion is this, not just for the United States, as thus?